This conference will now be recorded.
Good for us. Okay, let's call this meeting to order at whatever time it is, 9:02. And let's stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's do the roll call, shall we? Director Duncan. I am here. Director Johnson.
Here.
Director Moran. Here. Vice President Baker.
I'm here.
And President Dyson.
I'm here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. We have an agenda in front of us here today. If there's anything we object to, please let it be known. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dave. Any comments or questions on the agenda before I call for the vote? All right, here we go. I'm going to call for the vote to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're moving forward. Are there any comments from the public and or requests for future agenda items? Public being online. Sound okay?
I'm getting reports of some muffles from that side of the room, but I think it's overall an improvement.
Okay. We're working on sound issues. Please let us know if you continue to let us know what your complaints are. How's that?
I got a smiley face.
Are there any comments from the directors? Okay. And any correspondence received from the public? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, then we're ready to go down to section 2, the items for board consideration and possible action. 2A is the approval of the board of director meeting minutes. This is a, I want to say, consent calendar item. If there are, having looked over these minutes, does anyone have any questions or concerns about what is in there? Do we have an A for the minutes taker? Looks like it.
I'll move to approve, or don't we need to do that to make consent? So I'll second it.
Okay, so moved by Diane and seconded by Tammy that we approve the minutes of April 25th, 2023 and May 9th, 2023. Any discussion, any comments from the public? So it looks like you get an A. Thank you. I'm going to call the question for approval of these minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. 2B is the selection of dynamic engineering to serve as the BWD district engineer.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This might feel like a little bit of deja vu. But with the departure of David Dale, it creates the need for us to refill the district engineer position, and this happened once before. But so maybe, let's see, I was here. Today is actually my 7-year anniversary to this day, 7/11/2016. What's 7 years? Cardboard or something? Give me a box.
You don't have to give you a
empty box.
Okay.
Empty box. So when David departed, oh gosh, he went to Calexico, right? I shouldn't let be the city manager. We also had the need to fill the district engineer position, and David actually recommended Carlos Beltran from Dynamic Engineering. David and Carlos had a long professional background together, worked on projects for decades, and so BWD hired Carlos to be our district engineer for couple years, up until David decided to come back. So we have experience with Carlos, and Carlos has experience with us. Now, I can't say that Carlos is fully up to speed on our system. It's been a couple of years since he's probably thought about as much, so there'll be a little bit of reacclimation, but the good news is, it's in there, right? It's in his subconscious, how our system works, how it's these 5 separate improvement districts that are hooked together, and the pressure gradients, and, you know, it's like riding a bike. It will all come back shortly. And so, you know, as I scanned the horizon and looked at options to fill the position this time, obviously Carlos was the obvious and natural choice. I thought, you know, let me just look around a little bit further, and I did contact other consulting engineers on the other side of the hill, and thank you very much, Carlos. The rates that Carlos has quoted us are reasonable compared to others, and I feel that especially there's no sacrifice of quality, but you know, we're on the Imperial Valley pricing structure as opposed to Orange County or San Diego County, to where it was literally, in some cases, $100 an hour difference in professional services. So thank you very much, Carlos, for keeping to give us the family discount. And so it just didn't seem economically feasible, and there was no advantage to hiring the expensive guys and gals from the other side of the hill. And based on Carlos's experience with us, he knows us. He knows how to get projects done in the desert environment. I can let Carlos explain his background here in a little bit. He can do a much better job than I, but he's been doing this water and wastewater, water pipelines, wastewater collection projects for a long time. Carlos will admit he is not a wastewater treatment plant expert. The good news is we have Duda, well qualified, a lot of experience, working at our wastewater treatment plant, which is good. So Dudek is working on the wastewater treatment plant related topics, right? Looking at our nitrogen bottleneck and our TDS study. So the wastewater treatment plant issues are being covered by Dudek, which, as I said, Carlos admits that's kind of a specialty all to itself that he does not have. But Carlos is really good at sewer lines, wastewater collection, right? But then the whole water system, pipes and pumps and tanks and everything else. So after evaluating all the options, and then Esmeralda and I ran a number of ads in Aqua News and the Brown and Caldwell newsletter. I did get one response from an engineer in Chicago who was literally working on a billion-dollar water project and was really good at managing consultants, but, you know, putting pen to paper and working on design and putting together documents. It just wasn't what he had been doing recently. I'm sure he could do it, but you know, he definitely wasn't willing to move from Chicago to Borrego for what we can afford. So we kind of looked at all, you know, viable options, and I don't mean that in a bad way, Carlos. It's just we have to look at all options. You know, we're spending the public's money, and it just came back to, you know, Carlos seems to be, it has always been, but it's still the natural choice as I get to the end of this process. So I'll let Carlos speak here in a second. I know that we're all here to listen to him talk, but I think it's real important for the board to know how I see this role going forward. You know, David did a lot of pipeline design work and tank design with the 3 tanks that we're building now and the pipelines that have been built. The board approved a contract for Carlos to design the Borrego Springs Road transmission main and the Sun Gold pipeline replacement project as part of that ISA Padilla money. So that project is underway. Carlos has all the in-house surveying capabilities, so the surveying is done. We're putting together the plan sheets as we speak, and you know, later this year we'll be ready to bid. We'll call it the ISA Padilla project. And so Carlos is working via a separate contract for us, one that you all approved 2 months ago-ish. He's working on that project specifically already. So today is really just I'd love to have all of you listen to hear from Carlos, ask any questions you have, and then let's authorize Steve and I to put together the consulting agreements to get Carlos hired. We'll bring those back at the next meeting, do the cursory review of the consulting agreement, make sure everybody's cool with it, get that approved in 2 weeks, and go from there. Okay. To me, a lot of the pipeline design and tank design work is done. You know, we're kind of dependent upon grant money to do any more additional pipeline work other than what's on the books now. So as I think about Carlos's role going forward, I don't see an immediate, other than the project he has on his plate already, other pipeline project in the pipeline. There we go. But anything's possible if we get the ISA Padilla Feinstein agreed. Yes, both this time. America's Got Talent. If we get the money this time, you know, we'll hire him again and do the work via a separate contract. So this is really purely about the district engineer work. So Probably the biggest project going forward would be the Rams Hill evaluation of the water and sewer and flood and whatever other impacts are associated with their development. There's a committee, Dave and Tammy and myself, and Jessica and Steve have met with Rams Hill on some of the specific issues already, which, we've come up with kind of a wide array of issues that need to be discussed: water related, raw and potable, wastewater related, flood control related, and in some ways, that list becomes the summary and outline of a scope of work, which would be the issues that the engineers need to evaluate and discuss. And so that document, the list of issues, as well as a proposed agreement with Rams Hill going forward, is the topic of a closed session discussion later today on our agenda. So I think Carlos helping us, and in essence being an extra set of eyes and ears, the district's true representative in kind of doing project administration going forward on the Rams Hill project, is probably the way we go. And we would have UDEC do kind of the vast majority of the technical engineering calculations and review, and Carlos would be more in the project management role. But we're still kind of feeling out right now what would be the best way to kind of address the wide array of T2 issues. So that project is still, and what's the best way to handle the T2 issues is still a work in progress, but near the top of the list of what Carlos and the committee and I need to kind of work on. What's the best way and what consultants are most qualified to get the highest quality work done on the various issues associated with the T2 development. All that, fortunately, will be funded by T2. So we will continue to work with Rams Hill / T2 on these technical issues. We'll have Carlos's input going forward as our district engineer. An extra set of eyes and ears that's obviously a lot more technically qualified than the rest of us that have been going to the meetings in the past. So we're just kind of starting the Rams Hill process, so there's not a lot of catch-up to be done. No decisions have been made yet. Just talking about the specific issues that need to be covered. So I think the timing is perfect to bring Carlos on board. So that's why we're sitting here today. Carlos, if you're, I see you're square.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Jeff. And I mean, you explained everything really well. I don't know there's much left to say, but we're more than happy to be helping and working with you guys again. I know we did work before a few years back when David Dale left, and we'll be able to we'll gladly help you as long as you need it, and until David Dale comes back again. But no, we're to be working with you guys again. So if you have any questions or anything, let me know.
Or any questions for Carlos? So the idea, Jeff, is to hire Carlos on an ongoing basis rather than specific to each project.
Okay, so the answer is both. When there are specific projects like the pipeline design project, that would be a separate scope of work, like we've done with Borrego Springs Resort and Sungold. What we're talking about here today is kind of just the pure district engineer function, ones that aren't maybe necessarily project specific. But even if they are project specific, that's cool. I mean, we need to have engineering costs. We're a water district, that's normal, right? And then in the Rams Hill case, that is all reimbursable going forward. So today it's just purely the district engineer function, kind of the everything that's not covered by a separate agreement. Once again, I really can't think of anything right now. Like Carlos, like tomorrow, I can't think of anything I need to talk to Carlos about. Like, we need your help tomorrow on this. Carlos and I did spend to get maybe half an hour, a little longer on the phone yesterday. I got a chance to update him on all the projects. He was shocked to hear how much work we have completed. I think Carlos did the pipeline design on the Deanza project when we did those initially, which was kind of the first pipeline replacement project finished. And I did mention that, Alan's got everything covered. Alan has really stepped in to take David's spot on kind of wrapping up the construction management on the tanks, including working with the Division of Drinking Water on getting the tank inspections done. But I did say, Alan's very likely have it all covered, but we have that little bit of tricky operations coming up when the Indian head tank goes out. We've updated all of our booster stations and everything's cool, but I'm just saying, Carlos, there might be an engineering issue that pops up once we start operating that system. We've done it for a long time in the past when, one of our wells was out. I think the well by the high school was out. So we've ran this booster pump for a long time and we know it works, but I'm just thinking, we might need some district engineer help to help operations when we start the Indian head construction. But we might not. I mean, once again, we've tested it, we've upgraded everything, it will very likely work, but I'm kind of grasping for straws in terms of what Carlos might be able to help us with here in the short term. So that might be one of the first projects. But once again, if everything goes smooth, we might not need any help from him at all on the Indian head tank project.
I think it's really important, Jeff, that you have a district engineer available to call when you need a consult. You never know when it's going to happen. I think it's important that the district have somebody, even if there's no work on, available to do work. Stuff happens. So,
right.
I think,
we don't have immediate emergency.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's really important that you have that on as one of your sort of available staff, extended staff members.
I have a question for Carlos. Jeff mentioned you worked on housing development similar to Ramsdale. Were they all in Imperial County or have any been in San Diego County?
Most of our work is in the Riverside and Imperial County. And we do, Jeff mentioned, I have a lot of experience in water resources projects, pipeline design. Right now, we're about almost done completing almost 8 miles of water lines in Coachella Valley area for Coachella Valley Water District. So that is a big project from 12-inch water lines to 30-inch water lines. So that's major transmission lines and numerous projects here in Imperial County from one of our clients. One of our main clients is Imperial County Public Works and another one, the Imperial Irrigation District. So Riverside County, Coachella area, and Imperial County, that's our area. Borrego Water District out of San Diego County, but it's only 60, about an hour and 10-minute drive from our office. So it's not that far. So we kind of concentrate in the desert area, for our work.
Have you gotten involved? I think that Coachella Valley Water District, did I read they're been building some new pipes for non-potable water, maybe from the Colorado, something like that?
It is water from the Colorado River, but it is potable water. The projects we're doing, we're bringing water to a lot of the mobile home communities and like southeastern Coachella area they're all on wells. So we're bringing them potable water from Coachella Valley Water District.
That's right.
And fire protection. So I don't know if you read the news, like there's a fire in one of the mobile home park and really cannot stop it. It just takes off. So what we're providing is potable water for those mobile home communities and fire protection.
Thank you.
Hey, Carlos, can you also mention the recent addition of your new engineer, the guy from ID?
Yes, one of the guys that will be helping me and helping you guys as well is Frank Fiorenza. He is he just retired months ago from Imperial Irrigation District. He was their deputy director, senior engineer. Retired. He wants to do consulting, not having a full-time job, so he wants to work 30 hours a week. And he has a lot of experience with water projects. Like I say, he was their senior engineer at Imperial Irrigation District. So he joined Dynamic Sonic Engineers about 4 months ago, and he will be working on as needed basis on any project that you guys have over there.
Great.
Lucas Samal.
That we hire dynamic engineering to serve as the BWD district engineer.
Okay, so that means we're working on the paperwork.
Yeah, we'll come back next week with all the contracts and we can put that on the consent calendar and get it approved real quick. But
Do I have a second? All right, any further discussion or questions on this topic? Anything from the public? So I'm going to call the question to move forward with Jeff and Steve's help to hire Dynamic Engineering and Carlos Beltran as our district engineer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We're going forward for Carlos.
You're hired again. Yep.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you guys.
And let's talk soon about you coming out. Thanks, Carlos.
Sure. Thank you.
Carlos.
Okay. Have a good one.
Okay, item 2C is the PFAS testing on BWD-owned or BWD-accessible wells.
Yes, Madam President. If you recall, at the last board meeting, we were talking about PFAS testing. And the US EPA has a program that's starting, and that actually we should be receiving the sample bottles, hopefully, next spring. But I think staff and the board felt that it sure would be nice to do a little bit of testing before that point. And so I think at the last meeting, I started firing out, we'll do the Porter and the Bowers and this and that. Well, I think I started with 3 wells in the northern management area, then rounded it up to 5, and then should have asked Trey at the beginning. I asked Trey at the end of my pin the tail on the donkey session of how many samples we should do, and Trey had some ideas about tying the PFAS testing logic to nitrate levels in the basin, maybe targeting the wells that had higher nitrate concentrations, and so with the help of Trey and the Water Quality Committee. Smart people put their heads together and put a little bit more thought into it, and Trey put together a real comprehensive plan in a very short time period of how we can get 10 wells sampled easily, because they're BWD controlled wells, so it's always nice for us to be able to just go out there and pull the samples and not have to work with other bureaucracies. So these are all wells that are easily accessible and also have other markers that make them an interesting candidate for additional PFAS sampling. So, Trey shared a PowerPoint presentation with the committee last Friday, and I think Trey will be ready to share that with the full board today, and we'll talk about getting the testing started. And today the plan would be let's agree on the locations, and then I will proceed with getting the samples done as soon as possible. Okay? So Trey, tell us what you know about PFAS and where we should sample here in Borrego.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, President Dyson, board members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, Trey. Perfect.
Oh, fabulous. And kudos to your IT team. The audio is much better than the last meeting in the boardroom. I can hear you guys loud and clear.
For 3 hours yesterday.
We ended up having to get you to come back and fix the jack for the conference.
No, it sounds perfect today compared to the last meeting. Esmeralda, will you give me permission to share screen? And while Esmeralda's, oh, here we go. That was quick. Can you all see my slides?
Make it full screen.
Kind of small, but
I'll make them bigger.
There.
do the slideshow. There we go. Perfect.
There we go.
Here we go. So I'm going to give a quick background on PFAS. Some of these slides may look familiar from, I think, a fall board meeting. But PFAS are per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They're a group of synthetic chemicals used in products to make them non-stick or resistant to water, oil, and stains. Although there are more than 4,000 PFAS compounds, PFOA and PFOS are the 2 most studied and most prevalent. Known as forever chemicals, PFAS compounds possess chemical bonds that make them difficult to break down and allow them to bioaccumulate in living organisms. Some PFAS are highly soluble, making them relatively mobile in surface and groundwaters, and their persistence in soils allows them to leach into drinking water aquifers. Examples include nonstick cookware, pizza boxes, and other paper-based food containers. This is a little quick cheat sheet for you all. I won't go through it in detail, but this is kind of the best one I've found in the last year. It's in a USGS publication, but provides some additional terminology for PFAS that you can review at your leisure when I send these slides out. What are some of the health effects? Reproductive effects, decreased fertility or increased high blood pressure, development effects, low birth weight, accelerated puberty, bone variations or behavioral changes, increase of some cancers, immune system effects, and other physiological effects. For example, for those of you on statins, increased cholesterol levels or risk of obesity. How are they regulated? Currently, there are no drinking water maximum contaminant levels for PFAS. They're undergoing development right now, but they're regulated through a notification level, which is the level that water agencies are required to notify local elected officials and governing bodies of the presence of contaminants. And then we have the response levels, which are essentially the levels at which you no longer can serve the water. These are similar to last fall, except we have one updated notification level, and that is for the one here at the bottom, the perfluorohexane sulfonic acid, or the PFHXS. That's newly introduced late last year. That notification level is 3 parts per trillion. Response level is 20 parts per trillion. PFOA notification level is 5.1 parts per trillion. Response level 10 parts per trillion. And PFOS is 6.5 and 40 parts per trillion, respectively. And these are super low concentrations, just so you have some kind of idea of what a part per trillion is. It's a drop of water in 20 Olympic-size swimming pools. Where are they located? Well, as you've been hearing in the news, pretty much everywhere, but these are some of the traditional transport methods. They've been applied in agriculture. They can infiltrate and be transported through groundwater. They can be biomagnified through biota, and they are also been found frequently in wastewater treatment facilities. One thing we really consider when we're looking at PFAS is the source, and unlike your typical contaminants where they might originate from a leaking underground storage tank at a gas station or some type of point source, what we're finding with PFAS is that they're prevalent everywhere. They're ubiquitous in consumer products, and at these part per trillion concentrations, we're finding them everywhere. We're actually having some fairly large issues with cross-contamination when we sample for PFAS at the wellhead. If you fill up your car with gas, if you have a wrapper from a fast food hamburger, there's at these parts per trillion concentrations, there's potential for cross-contamination. So that's something that we're having to be very sensitive of when we collect our samples. And then what we're ultimately concerned about is the final receptor, whether that be someone drinking a cup of water out of your local water supply, or a particular wildlife that are being impacted by PFAS. And just so you know, how are PFAS treated? Orange County, Los Angeles, these systems are already installed. They've spent, in some cases, close to $1 billion for treating PFAS in Southern California. Reverse osmosis obviously is effective, but is very costly from an energy standpoint. Most of the PFAS systems, I understand, are these kind of specially designed granular activated carbon systems that are achieving similar percent removal now at a lower cost. To date, just a refresher, the only PFAS sampling that I'm aware that has occurred is for 5 wells sampled in 2019 at the landfill. They were analyzed for 24 PFAS substances, and nothing was detected above the reporting limits. So what we did to kind of maybe better screen for wells to sample, there's a lot of wells in the basin. The sampling, as you'll see later, is costly. But as you may recall from, some of you may recall from the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, groundwater management plan, a lot of the water in the basin, especially in the deeper formations, was placed during the last ice age, or is 10,000 years old, and may not necessarily be impacted by anthropogenic contaminants. But one way we can kind of better determine whether or not that has occurred is to look at nitrate and compare it to the background. So the background is in the basin is likely less than 0.5 to nil. So when we have these higher concentrations, such as Fortner at 20 milligrams per liter, it's pretty clear that we've seen modern return flow in that well, and that there's going to be a higher likelihood for not only there to be nitrate, but if PFAS was used in the basin, for there also to be PFAS. So we used the water quality database that was updated for the groundwater management plan, and now the Water Master staff has been updating with their sampling. We now have all that data. We used all the historical data, screened it. This is a little further screening. We got rid of some of the wells from the 50s and 60s that had higher concentrations but no longer exist. But looking at modern wells, the top 20 wells that kind of hit for nitrate run from the Rodenrudder Club all the way down to ID4, where we had positive concentrations. And the ones that are highlighted in more of a gray are wells that the district has access to, and that there are also an active pump and motor in that well, so you could sample it. This next figure kind of shows a summary of our recommendations, and we did consult with the Borrego Water District staff on some of these, but based on the nitrate concentrations, we're recommending sampling the Fortner well, ID418, ID49, which you may recall is the replacement well for ID44, ID411, ID116. We did kind of want to get a better spatial distribution of samples, so we're recommending ID18 as well, and that's 6. And then it's come to our attention, and the district has made us aware that they now have access to the West Bower North well. I don't have data for that well currently. I don't know what the nitrate concentration is per se, but that's in total 7 wells for this initial screening. I'll pause right there and just see if the board or anyone present has any questions.
Well, we're good. Anybody
Okay.
have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I want to comment to the board that it's not just shampoo and firefighting foam, that various PFAS, I guess I should say it that way, are used in both pesticides and fertilizers. And
Right.
Obviously, that's a much bigger concern here than firefighting foam.
Yeah. Okay, understood.
And Diane, we did download the pesticide database yesterday. As you know, it's pretty clunky. So I have one of my programmers kind of trying to strip out what pesticides have been applied in Borrego, and that does go back to 1974. And I think the data is now through 2001 or 2. So we'll get back to you on that question that you had, Diane, about what pesticides have been applied, and we'll try to identify if any of those pesticides potentially had PFAS as an ingredient, and they might have been an inactive ingredient.
Thank you. Great. Wow.
So what are we going to sample for? The current method is EPA method 533, and that samples for 25 PFAS substances. They're also including this older method, method 537.1, which they're using now for 4 PFAS substances. The problem with the older method was it had an issue identifying the shorter chain PFAS. So in total, there's 29. What we've been doing in some other basins currently, especially where we're doing screening, because there is a cost to these samples, as you'll see, is that we've been really using method 533 to screen, because it includes all of the PFAS constituents that have notification and response levels. So I'll move on here to the budget. So here's a proposed budget. This is actually for 6 samples, as you'll see, and this is the Babcock retail price. So I'm not 100% sure if there's going to be a discount on this or not, but it's about $400 per sample using EPA method 530. The other thing that is required, because we're at parts per trillion concentration, they also want you to collect a field blank. And what that is that the lab provides you with PFAS-free water, and you essentially fill the BOAs or the sample container in the field at the wellhead, using that PFAS-free water to determine whether or not there's any potential cross-contamination that's occurring when you collect the sample. So that adds another $400 per sample, because the EPA method is requiring that at every wellhead. So if you just do for the initial screening with 25 samples, it's around $7,000. If you want to add the additional PFAS substances by method, the 4 additional, looks like you have an extra I there, by EPA method 537.1, that's another $400 per sample. So for 6 samples, it would be roughly $9,100. And that was, I believe, pretty close to the budget Jeff originally established. That's all the slides I have today on PFAS. I have a few slides on the TAC update if you want to see those. But I'll hold there for any questions.
We met with Trey on Friday, the Water Quality Committee. Trey, could you just kind of go over the challenges you've had sampling in your other areas, and the fact that sometimes there's contamination from someone touching a fast food wrapper, and that you've had to retest several times to make sure? I mean, it's not just a one-time thing, right?
So like you have to have really clean hands.
Well, there's a protocol. Yeah.
Right.
But even so, if we detected, in other cases, you've tested 2 or 3 times.
Right. So this is not, because these are parts per trillion concentrations, this is not going to be one and done sampling. Next year, I believe that you're going to have some samples subsidized for all your wells. So this is a perfect opportunity to do some initial screening. But we have, especially at these parts per trillion concentrations, we have been having detections for both PFOA and PFAS below the notification level. And often we'll be in basins where we don't see any other wells detecting. So we really have to sample sometimes multiple times to really confirm its presence, that we're confident it's there. I forwarded it to Jeff, but there's a detailed sampling protocol that the state has developed. There's stuff like you don't want to fill your gas tank 24 hours prior to the field crew sampling. You don't want to use sunscreen. It's very particular, and if you do have any missteps, there's the possibility, and that's why I included 8 hours here for sample protocols and sample bottles for BWD staff to get familiar with that process. And there is the potential that your samples are collected appropriately, you don't have any PFAS in your field blank, and then you get a hit at the lab because it's parts per trillion concentration. A mass spec may have run some hot samples from a different site before yours, and they basically have to purge that equipment, and they do run samples to make sure it's clean, but there's always the possibility for cross-contamination at the lab even. We've seen that on a couple samples, we think, on past projects. So there is the potential to need to resample to get a high confidence that you're actually seeing PFAS in your well. So we do want to make that clear. And I think it's, you'll certainly be able to have an opportunity for the regulators to be paying for these samples for your production wells. And I think it's great we added the Bauer well and the Fortner well, which are private wells, to get a better sense of if there are any private wells that are in the basin that have PFAS. Tina, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted everyone to know that I don't think it's just a one and done $9,000 thing. We may have to go out a couple more times if we find anything. So I think that's the challenge. I mean, whatever it was, 1 drop of water, 20 Yeah.
Would be easy to cross-contaminate on that level.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
So does the cost of this, does the cost of this sampling, is it reimbursable from the EPA, or did they actually do it?
That would be next spring.
Yeah,
Next spring, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe they provide the bottles, they provide the lab testing services, so the sampling would be free, but I think we still have to collect and transport and deliver, but we wouldn't be paying the 9,100, the equivalent of the 9,100 next spring, right?
Well, we would pay to do it earlier.
Yeah, so we're screening in advance. So 9,000 is probably the minimum cost. And if we had to go back, then there could be. So what was it per well then? Was to do a test?
I think it was around $400.
Well, that was the extra test. So. What was
Yeah, it would be a little over 1,000 per well. Like
per well?
Because this is 6 wells for $9,100.
You were recommending 6 or 7 wells tested?
We have 7 on our slide. We could hold off on ID-1-8. That would be sampled as part of the state federal requirement next year. But this is our current. We did want to have a geographic distribution. You could hold off on 8 and just do 6. ID-1-16 and north would be a good a sample size for sure, but I just part of the screening, we kind of got 7 in here, and the water quality committee had kind of landed on 6. So the idea would be to hold off on ID-1-8 in the south management area this time around.
Question, and Trey, does the 6 include or exclude Fortner and Bauer North?
The 6 would include Fortner and Bauer. So if we get rid of ID-118, we've got the 6 kind of in the central management area and the north management area to sample for this initial screening.
Okay, because especially on that William Bauer deal, I think as we were talking at the last meeting, we can actually run the pumps now, put the water into the irrigation system still, so actually running the system and getting a sample is a lot easier now than it will be once everything's torn out, all the irrigation's gone and the trees are gone.
So the water quality committee.
So thank you, I'm glad it's on the list, so thank you, yeah.
So the water quality committee recommends the 6 then? The 6
Well, I don't think we had the Bauer well kind of on our radar on Friday.
I don't think so.
So that was an addition, and I mean, I think we still would want a sample in the south as well. I mean, they
one sample in the south would be a good idea.
So it's $10,000,
Yeah, yeah.
Or, probably over $10,000.
Doing the calculations. Okay, so it looks like it's about $1,500 per well. And so the total for 7 wells would be $10,600.
Can we afford that, Jeff? I mean, you understand the budget. Jeff,
And Jessica,
Water quality is so critical, and that's our core responsibility.
and also our financial officer is present, so we should. Where would that money come from?
I know we did, budget for additional testing expenses this year. I haven't got a chance to reconcile it to Trey's number, but, I don't see that being prohibitive to our,
10,600.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern too is, could be at 10,600, and then again.
Plus.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember what our budget number was for testing?
I can tell you in just a second.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I guess for Trey, I mean, even if there is contamination, say, in one of our, do you anticipate that we're gonna find it above reporting levels? In any, I mean, I know that's like a weird question.
I mean, that's
probably a
kind
hard
of-
one to answer.
The ballparker.
Right, well,
It is such a ubiquitous contaminant that we're finding it in relatively undeveloped watersheds. You know, they're finding it in very remote areas of the world, so there's potential for it to be detected. We just won't know until we sample it, but we are finding detection in remote watersheds that are below the notification limits, but we are finding it. And you may have seen there was a recent USGS study that is finding it in, or estimates that it's in a large percentage of private wells.
and then one more question, since you have that PFAS-free sample, does that help then trace contamination issues? Like sample contamination?
Exactly. That's why EPA is requiring that field blank, so they can rule out that the sample was contaminated at the surface while you were collecting it from some sort of cross contamination. That's one procedure they're implementing. It's actually a requirement by the EPA when you're sampling from a regulatory standpoint. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of helps us figure out if it's.
Did you find the numbers?
Yes, so we increased our budget for the next fiscal year by $6,000. And I have notes that there's the potential for PFAS monitoring wells and the Bower well additional, but I did, at that time, we were still considering the PFAS being EPA funded. So that might not be enough in that budget category, but,
So how much is actually in it?
$37,664
For everything, for all
everything,
water
yeah.
quality testing.
And for the fiscal year that just ended, we spent just under $35,000. So it's really only about an extra $2,500 in the category, but we could, sure we could find somewhere to take a couple grand from a couple places.
What budgets are for.
Yeah.
Tell you about what you're spending. Are there any questions for Trey from the public? None. So, board, what would you like to do?
Shall I move that we go ahead and test? We're at 7 Wells.
That's up to you. You want to make the motion?
Yes, I move.
This is your idea.
I know. I just got something off my chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was for 7 Wells?
7, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments before I call the question? Any comments from the public? All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of testing for PFAS in 7 of the groundwater basin wells, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. So we're going to test, Trey.
Terrific.
We'll see what's there before the EPA gets to us. or for a start. Thank you, by the way.
Thanks, Trey. Thanks. Quality Committee, thank you very much.
Can you hang in there, Trey, until we get down to the Water Master Board for the TAC report?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So we got 2D, the August BWD board meeting schedule.
Yes, Madam President, summer is here. And I think way back in the good old days, we took the entire month of August off, and then got so busy we took 1 week off, and then maybe 0 weeks off recently. We have the option.
Last couple of years, I don't think we've taken any off.
So I guess, does the board have any preference? I guess from the staff's perspective, it would be nice to have 1 scheduled board meeting, and then maybe the option to have 1 if needed or not. So I guess maybe my question to you all would be, if we were going to have 1 meeting in August, would you rather have it be the early one or the late one, based on your schedule? Or maybe you're fine without having 1 at all. I'm just assuming we should probably at least plan on having 1, just because. And then the option to have 2, but I'll let you all tell me what your preference is, one way or the other.
Well, I would rely on the rest of you, because it happens that I will be gone for both potential meetings in August. I will be in Madagascar.
What?
So, yes.
Off to Africa again.
I'm off to Africa again.
Out of Africa, Kathy.
Yeah, really.
Wow.
Can't seem to stay away from the place. Anyway.
Can you take the agenda to the?
I will be out of touch. I've been told that Madagascar is mostly off the grid, so I could send, I don't know, drum signals or something, but I don't know, anyway.
Be a hot spot. How about that?
So the 4 of you would be determining how many meetings you want to do, or if any. And I think it's good to keep 1 potentially on the schedule, just in case, and you could always not have it, right? If there's nothing to talk about, you don't have to meet, so. But we have in the past, and during quieter times in this community, been able to take the whole month of August off. But I don't think that's happened since Sigma.
Is it worth or okay to ask if T2 things are liable to be heated up enough that we need T2 discussions that we need to meet in August?
When it comes to the wastewater treatment plant issues, those aren't going to be resolved in August.
And then is there anything that we anticipate on the water master side that would require us to meet?
I was looking at the agenda for the water master coming up this week, and they didn't really even have anything in August. And so far, so they may not even meet in August. That's potential there right now.
But if we are going to have 1 meeting, I would prefer the normal first of the month meeting on August the 8th as opposed to the 22nd. School begins the 21st.
Whoa.
I second that. I will be in town on the 1st, and I would be able to attend the remote for the latter meeting, so I would also prefer the 1st.
I'm fine with
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I'll be having to phone in again. Yeah, well, actually, August 8th, yeah, I'll probably have to phone in again, from the East Coast. that's okay, I'll do the posting thing and all that, and put my sister's address.
And Tammy and I will be here.
Yeah, so there will be a quorum.
There'll be three of us.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, with any luck, you won't have to meet, but it's nice to know that the meeting is scheduled just in case. Okay, good. All right, so now we're gonna go down to item 2E, the Borrego Springs Subbasin Water Master Board.
So I'm just officially canceling the second meeting, right?
Yes.
Gone. Deleting it from my calendar.
Yes,
Okay.
you will not be.
Madam President, I
Yes.
apologize for interrupting. This is Steve. If we're going to cancel a regular meeting, it would be better to do that by board vote because regular meetings are required. So it's okay to cancel, but we should vote on that. Thank you.
Okay,
Which one's special and which one's regular?
First.
well, this one today is a special meeting, so I would think that it's the first.
The first is the special and the second is
The
regular.
regular.
Okay, so we have to vote to cancel the regular one.
Right.
Got it.
So, board,
So, to
move to
cancel
cancel
the
this. Okay,
August 22nd meeting.
I'll second.
thank you. Any discussion on that matter? Any comment from the public? All right, I'm gonna call for the question. The motion is on the floor to, cancel the August 22nd meeting, August 22nd, 2023 meeting. All in favor?
Yes. Wait, I thought you said cancel the August 8th meeting.
No.
Did I hear that wrong? Okay. Yeah, aye.
Let me do that one more time. All in favor of canceling the August 22nd, 2023 meeting this year, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstentions? That is settled. Now we'll go down to the Borrego Springs Subbasin Water Master Board. And what say you, Dave?
Not much.
We already talked about what happened at the June meeting, right?
Yeah, pretty
I
much.
think the agenda just came out,
The
right? The
agenda
water
just
master
came out.
Yeah.
yesterday or two
The
days ago.
items on the board for this Thursday are in regards to agendas for the EWG and the TAC. And there's another topic on establishing a process for third party.
Which troubles me. Well, how it's stated on the agenda is that anyone asking for water master resources, not for technical assistance, not to collaborate on a project, but to use water master resources. Well, that takes us right back where if UCI came to the water master today and this was approved, then they would have to jump through all these hoops. It's ridiculous. We voted twice to say that this particular request to use water master resources was not of a technical nature. So I am going to be speaking loudly when this particular item comes up on the agenda, that's not what we have discussed, that's not what we so far have agreed to. So when someone wants to come to the water master to ask for true technical assistance, I have no problem with those conditions. But I think there needs to be a determination, and I think that the water master board is capable of doing that, whether the request is of a technical nature or not.
So define the difference between a technical request, request for technical services and what are water master resources?
I think anything. I think the use of the TAC for feedback and review. I think to collaborate on a project. Those are resources. It's technical advisory committee or it's EWG. To participate in some way, whether in a review or in actual participation in a project. Would qualify. But resources would mean, availability to water sample or the other things that were originally requested and approved. I think it's a way to kind of weasel around something that we've already done.
They haven't given up yet.
No, they have not given up yet.
Okay.
And that's very frustrating. And the other issue that's going to come up is I raised a question last meeting, what are the responsibilities and duties and powers that are conferred to a GSA by Sigma. And Jim and I have been going back and forth. I have a concern that there are still people, one in particular that sits on the board, that is convinced that the judgment creates a wall that shields the water master from the full responsibilities and duties and powers from Sigma. And I do not believe that that's the case. And I think Markman agrees. It will be interesting whether he will actually say that or not.
His letter suggests that he agrees with what you're saying.
It does.
Although it's in lawyer speak.
Yes.
I think Markman's letter sort of suggests that, but I'm looking at a paragraph at the bottom of page 38 that says, I believe we would have to look at very specific circumstances to determine whether GSA powers drawn from Sigma are necessary in addition to inherent court powers to address a particular issue. So I think he's still putting the judgment first there. I'd love to hear from Steve about that, and I don't know if that's an open or closed session question. Mr. Markman also doesn't mention water quality as an undesirable result, which of course kind of caught my eye.
Yeah. I think Mr. Markman, as usual, is trying to keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he sees. I think he agrees with your point, Dave, and it'll be interesting to see what he actually says.
Yeah.
On Thursday.
Well, I did find it interesting, and I don't, whether this is a closed session item or not, but the email directed back to DWR from Russ McLaughlin, indicates that the judgment, I forget what the language is, I could look at it quickly, but that basically that it is subject to all of the duties and responsibilities of a GSA. And it was never the judgment's intent to separate itself from Sigma.
Steve, do you have any comments on any of that? Or would you rather not talk about it in open session?
No, I agree with Dave. I don't think that the memo from Mr. Markman was as comprehensive as it could be. I don't think it's consistent with the email that Russ and several of us worked on to send to DWR. So we can talk about maybe later what to do about that, but I'm not quite sure where that's coming from.
Which raises the question, is there sort of daylight, as they put it, between what Mr. Markman is telling the board and what other attorneys for water master representatives are telling DWR? That doesn't sound like a very good situation.
Well, it seems that if there is, we always have the judge to go to if things, if we feel that certain elements of the judgment are being abused.
The next meeting is in August, or next court.
Yeah, the next conference, I was about to say, I wonder if we might want to reconsider making a meeting on August, at the end of August, in case we have to vote on something that we're going to submit to the judge's report. But you know the date roughly, at least, Tammy?
I don't know.
Do you know the date, Steve, for the next court hearing?
The next, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sorry?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to look it up.
Okay.
It's a status conference. They're all status conferences.
Yeah, So I think anything that you want to talk about can be covered in the early August meeting, because the water master meeting is this
August 18th.
August 18th,
August
press
18th.
conference.
Okay.
So the August 22nd BWD meeting is too
Right,
late.
right, okay. So anything you decide to do will have to be determined at the next meeting, in the next, because the water master meeting is this Thursday, so we'll have time to talk about it.
So those are the two agenda items that give me pause.
Okay,
And I do intend to ask Mr. Markman,
specifically.
why he did not list water quality as an undesirable result. Was that just an omission on purpose? You know, why didn't he mention it? I mean, there's 6 of them, I believe, there's 7 of them. But there are only a handful that are really, you know, subsidence is not an issue here. Saltwater intrusion is not an issue here. But water quality certainly is.
That's worth a question. And in terms of the issue about third-party requests for resources, is there anything we should speak to on that?
I don't think that's necessary.
All right. Any other board activities, thoughts, ideas? Before I call on Trey.
There was a comment in the chat from the public,
Okay.
from Rebecca Falk. She said, well said, Dave, on beliefs about a well-protecting water master board from stigma. Also concerns about Markman and what he'll actually say are very valid in my experience.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hopefully we'll all be there on Thursday to hear what they said. All ears, hear everything differently. Let's see, Trey, what have you on the technical advisory committee? Did we lose him?
Your sound went out.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay.
There you are. Yes.
Yeah, I got 2 mute buttons when I'm on the phone. Apologize. I can give it to you verbally, or if you want to share screens again, I just have 3 slides to show. But the news this week on the TAC is that John Peterson has been appointed to the TAC at the request of Roadrunner Club by Richard Pinnell.
That's good. I'm glad he finally found a sponsor.
So there's John for you.
Yay. Okay.
And then the TAC right now, we're up working through some water use factors. I discussed at the last board meeting for the Borrego Valley hydraulic model, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how the Water Master staff is keeping track of our recommendations. As you may recall, on behalf of BWD, I submitted a recommendation letter. Andy Malone with West Yost, Water Master staff, has indicated our recommendations in this table. Bob Wagner with Aware for at least task 2 provided similar recommendations for the scaling factor and on-farm efficiency. If we recall, we discussed that at the last meeting, and also comparing that to reference ET. We also had similar comments from Tom Watson. Some of these items for the future in task 4 really are for a later task, but I did want to get them in the purview of the West Yost staff, so they're thinking about next steps and not just the task at hand. So our next TAC meeting is now scheduled as of yesterday for August 29th at 10 a.m. We will be reviewing the farm process task 2 to determine the sustainable yield. There's going to be a discussion of the 5-year update for the groundwater management plan. Discuss Department of Water Resources statewide airborne electromagnetic survey. I did reach out to DWR last week, the head of the AEM project. I haven't gotten word back yet. I think she was on vacation, but I haven't gotten any word back yet from her on the proposed schedule for potentially flying Borrego. And then Andy's also going to give the update I requested for the TSS monitoring wells. So that's what we have for TAC. Any questions with that?
Any questions, board? Go ahead, Diane.
I have a strategic question, I guess, which is, so we still don't know dates for the AEM, but if we need water master approval to potentially add more transects or whatever they're called, maybe that should be brought up at the August meeting, although the way things have been done, it's not on the, it's not, well, actually bringing it up at the July meeting later this week would be ideal. You know, sort of figuring out those timing issues. If we learn at the end of August that they're coming down here in September, for example, that just seems like an issue on timing, on getting more of these transects done, which I think could be designed to benefit all parts of the valley, including the southern management area, including possibly the air ranch, to try to settle like whether there's that perched aquifer out there. So I don't know what to suggest about that. But I think the ABM thing is a real opportunity.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. Right now the agenda is set for the water master for this month. They may not have a meeting in August. Right? So it is going to be playing a game of the odds in terms of when AEM might show up.
Well, that's what they fall under, this potential new policy of using water
Right,
master.
that's what I'm thinking too.
That's probably gonna extend everything for a 6-month process.
Right.
Master helicopter.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any way to bring up AEM under that topic of resource use?
I don't know why not.
I mean,
there's gotta be some stuff that.
I'm just looking for a way to edge it into the agenda this time. It's just to mention, hey, what about this? And I realize the board, the water master couldn't vote on something like that, but it should at least be brought up.
Well, that's something that the public, in terms of comments, could certainly do.
Hear that, board?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do it that way.
Yeah, during that discussion, I think. If there's an opportunity in the conversation about, third-party resources, that certainly falls into that category. So, or you could bring it up at the beginning as a public comment. I can take turns. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Trey on what's coming up? Trey, we appreciate your ongoing assistance with the TAC. So thank you very much.
Of course, it's a privilege. Thank you.
All right, we are going to move into section 3, the board committee reports if needed. Is there anybody that has anything on the standing or ad hoc committees to report?
I have a question for ABC.
Okay.
There were reported issues with the auditor in this past fiscal year, and has the ABC made a decision about whether to continue with the current auditor for another? Have you looked at that? Have you made a decision? Are you going to look to perhaps get out of the contract and go to another?
Didn't we have one more year with them?
Yeah, so I just this morning sent them the engagement letter for fiscal year 23, which is our final year of our contract. Generally, the contracts are 5 years at a time. And, you know, there are some beliefs on best practices of changing auditors periodically just for kind of checks and balances reasons.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we do want to switch, we should probably start thinking about an RFP or something for that. But we could definitely get together on it.
Okay. Yeah, I think when we discussed it before, we realized that we have to do this RFP and time-wise, we didn't know if we might get it done. And still be able to have them come in and audit. But I don't know, that's what I remember talking about.
So there's one, clear. So are they doing one more audit for us?
Right. So for the year ended just this last June 30th. So essentially we have about a year, a little less, probably 10 months or so to kind of.
And what do you think it would take to do an RFP and hire a new firm?
I know we've put them out in the past, so we could kind of brush off the old RFPs and update it and, you know, have legal review and, you know, review other districts like we do other RFPs. So, I mean, it would be my first time doing it, but I'm down to get my hands dirty.
Should the ABC meet and talk about that?
Or does everybody,
Or go forward with that idea?
Yeah, it was my understanding that the audit reports have been coming in later and later.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
There is a bit of a dissatisfaction.
I think the ABC committee, correct me if I'm wrong, we did talk about switching because just as Jessica said, it's not just the fact that the reports have been coming in later, but that sometimes it's a good practice to change companies to get new eyes on your audit, on your fiscal management. So, should we direct Jessica to go forward with an RFP then for an auditor? All right. So done. Move forward. Just another thing on your list of many to keep you busy.
I've been getting caught up on things, so it's time to have one.
Thank you, Jessica.
On outreach, as sort of comments from this part of the outreach committee, I've mentioned a few times how there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for outreach in Prop 68, and some efforts are starting on that, but I feel like there's a real need to at least call one sort of working group meeting of the people from the relevant people from each of the component towns to coordinate on this, because so many meetings would have to be held that I think it's totally unrealistic to think that, you know, the stewardship council could be having 5 and the school district can be having 5 so enough on that, but I think there needs to be some leadership in calling that initial meeting at least, and I feel like BWD has the most, status or street cred.
That's our job, for sure, yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds to me like you're suggesting that the outreach committee of the BWD reaches out to the other members of the Prop 68 outreach groups to coordinate what everybody's doing. Would September be soon enough?
Yeah,
because being a member of the outreach committee, I don't think that I'm gonna be available to, for anything like
Yeah.
that much before fall.
Maybe we could start trying to organize it in the next month or so. And maybe you could let us know if there are any dates that you can do in September, and then we could at least start calling people together, and then like mid-September at the earliest, give you time.
We can talk about it. As far as I know, September's wide open for me, so, speak now before the calendar goes up again. So, we'll talk about, contacting the, BDSC, the Borrego Valley Stewardship Council, and the school, right? Those are the two.
Well, there are, sort of sub-components, like ABNA is doing something, and YEB is doing something. And I'm also wondering about trying to get in the groups to whom we would do outreach, like the Borrego Village Association, or the churches. It just occurred to me yesterday that asking the churches to get involved in getting the word out there about these meetings. Just all those avenues that we use,
Right, but initially, wouldn't it be good to talk to the ones that are gonna be doing the outreach?
Yeah.
And then talk about
Right.
perhaps bringing other groups in?
Oh, you're right, yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's a step-by-step process that we can kind of, but we
Yeah,
can get there, for this next season,
Right.
what we should be working on,
Right.
so to get that ready.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Okay, so we'll work on that. Anything else from the committees? So we've given Jessica a task, we've given the outreach committee a task. Anything else?
Short term and cybersecurity, if you are a Mac user, Mac desktop or iPhone, there's a hot patch available. There's a 0-day defect out there, so go to the little install updates and install the update sooner not later. It's my recommendation. Thank you.
Don't let those scammers get a hold of you.
Don't let them in.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. We're gonna go down to section 4, the staff reports. And we have in 4A, an AMI proposal update under finance.
Well, not too much to report on that. We did, I think before the last meeting, the committee had our review of the RFQ. And there was a suggestion to kind of take a step back and maybe do a pre-interview, have a abridged version of the document to kind of see if the contractors are really interested, because, the whole package is very labor intensive. So this would kind of give people kind of like a pre-qualification before they go through the whole document. I know Jeff is working on some stuff, and we should have something ready, I think, by the next board meeting.
The challenge is condensing the requirements. As Jessica mentioned, the existing request for qualifications will take a lot of work. I mean, it talks about being a 50-page limit to the response. That's probably needed. So kind of the point is, we'd like to not have such a big barrier to entry in the beginning and have some sort of abbreviated version. But I think it's still important to have some of the really important components of the statement of qualification show up as part of this kind of the initial process. We need to know how long they've been in business. We need to have resources. We need to know what other projects they've done. That's important just for us to even say, okay, we want to interview you. We don't necessarily have to know all the details yet, but there are certain things that are so important, we would want to know that, in our opinion, before we even interview someone. So, and I don't have writer's block. This isn't even writer's block. This is editor's block. Everything seems important to me. It's getting really difficult for me to condense the statement of qualifications at all. It's like, okay, that's important. Well, that's important. That's important. So I've started, honestly, 3 or 4 times, and it just doesn't look any different when I get to the end. So that the writer or the editor's block will pass soon.
Can the AMI group help?
she's done so much, she's done so much to get me this far, and then, yeah, so I'm.
Yes, I can help. Yeah, so we've worked together on the big RFP, and I think that's getting close to being ready to go. So, yeah, I could do a stab just to like break through the editor's block but the whole idea is just to get a chance to talk for BWD, and not really Tammy, but BWD to like learn about AMI from these vendors, what do they do, what services they provide, what's it like to work with them.
To see different softwares, right? Oh, that one's confusing, oh, that one makes sense, like, right, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's more like a sales demo kind of
Pre-bid application or something, or pre-bid
presentation,
where you kind of invite people to come in and.
Yeah, show their stuff off.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But not get into the deep, like, what's the integration with our accounting package? Like, yes, you can do it, then later we'll see what that really looks like, right? That's the idea, which I think is absolutely the right next step.
Could you possibly put out the RFQ itself, the big long thing, and say this is the kind of stuff we're interested in? Come and tell us about your company, and leave it up to them what they. I think, and sometimes the government put out draft RFPs,
Or
like
they
for
call it like
huge.
a pre-bid, or I don't know what they call it.
But sometimes, like for huge defense contracts and stuff, the government comes up with a really rough draft and then takes input from Boeing and whoever and says, oh, okay, we need to out, and then that's the final RFP.
Well, I mean, what we have to do, is, have the RFP package and then have a bidders meeting where they could come and say, or whatever, they don't have to come here, but, then they can ask questions and everyone's at that bidders meeting. And then you take notes. And so all those questions are then answered and they present stuff. But they
Before that, where does BWD learn about them?
Yeah, I know.
That's what we're trying to do here is we ask questions, the team ask questions of them first.
Right. Like in terms of terminology, to me, it's the first step is the qualifications. What are your qualifications?
And
to me, the details come in the proposal of how do you propose to meet the needs of the district. So, to me, the first step is really the qualifications process. And then the second step is the more detailed, specific proposal. So that's kind of how I've separated them in my mind.
And I know it's a different thing, but we do have, Trey up here. I don't know if he does anything like that in his world. Comes and just does sort of more of a.
Like a solicitation of interested bidders, or.
Yeah, Trey's still there, so let's bring him in, shall we? So Trey, what happened is the city of Oceanside put together a 60-page preamble as well as like a RFQ document, and then also a template for the SOQ, what the responder should return. Like I said, really comprehensive. It's kind of what I kind of expected to see, kind of following the good old government traditional format of a lot of details, page after page, because it seemed like the other proposals I was looking at all seemed to be missing something. They were all real short, 1 pages, 2 pages. This was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. This goes right to the old government rhino, right? So we've customized the City of Oceanside the City of Oceanside document, and basically they wanted the process they would follow is you submit a statement of qualifications that's ranked, and then a short list is created, and then as part of the interview process, the pricing proposal is submitted, and then once you get to the end, the firm that comes out number 1 on the list, we open up the pricing proposal and then negotiate from there. So that was kind of the general format, but that really required a lot of work from each one of these metering vendors coming right out of the gate. I mean, I'll send you the document, but it's a really, like I said, super comprehensive document.
That Oceanside would
So
have a project, right?
We customized. It was their AMI proposal. It's like rate, but man, it's got 90%.
So, I mean, because of the size of their project, maybe it was much more common.
Excellent, they're adding a zero in some cases to what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, so.
Maybe 2 zeros, I forget how big they are, but obviously it's much
So,
larger.
so we could, I mean,
So
the
I guess-
process is valid, but, at what level?
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of struggling internally about how much work should we require of the consultant at the beginning of the process. So I guess Diane was saying, well, gee, what's Trey kind of used to?
Sure.
Diane, can you rephrase your question? I'm probably butchering up what you were trying to get to.
I asked the question.
Oh, I'm sorry, before I go on.
Well, just the question is, Trey, have you ever had to do anything like that? Go and present to a body before you put in your RFP?
Sure, Gina, absolutely. Often on more challenging and complicated projects, that's going to take a substantial amount of consultant time to respond to a proposal. They'll often do an initial solicitation request for qualifications, and they'll often pre-qualify maybe the top, sometimes it's 3 firms, sometimes it's 5 firms, but they'll get their qualifications, make sure for this particular type of activity, the AMI project, that they have sufficient number of projects and have the technology, for instance, that you might be interested in. And then you pre-qualify the bidders, so that way you might get down to 5, and you also understand who you're working with, and it gives them an opportunity to inform the development of the what would be next is typically the request for proposal. So before you submit that RFP that the pre-qualified bidders would submit on, they can ask questions, they can kind of inform the process a little bit so you understand what technologies are out there, et cetera. And then typically we'll often get pre-qualified for a project, and then an RFP that's more detailed and takes a considerable amount of time, often up to a month to prepare. Then we'll submit on that, and then they'll do final interviews. And even in some instances, we've had 2 rounds after that being qualified. Then there's an initial proposal, and sometimes there's a subsequent one. But on a project like this, I think 2 rounds would be appropriate. I'm sure Steve has also been involved with several solicitations for this type of work where there's multiple rounds. But I always appreciate when the districts pre-qualify, just because often there's a substantial amount of effort that's needed, and in this case, you might simply not, the vendor might not have the technology you're looking for. So it also often will get more interest in the project. You'll have, since it's not as much effort initially, you'll have more vendors that'll reach out to you and understand your specific needs. But I definitely recommend a pre-qualification or an RFQ process.
Qualification totally makes sense, right?
Yeah. I like that.
Okay, love it. Thanks, Trey.
Thank you, Trey.
Of course.
This is the help get the writer's block.
No. Have someone in there poking us. Anything else on finance?
We just need to be.
I will add, there was a comment from Trey on the AEM discussion.
Okay.
That the project manager is on vacation until July 17th, and he will give her a call after that.
Great. And now, the general manager report.
Okay.
Dun-dun-dun.
We did hear back from DWR on the Prop 68 grant reimbursable processing. If you recall, our grant manager, Chris Martinez, was out on paternity leave during June, something like that.
Oh, wow.
He's now back and has gone through his inbox and actually gone through our submittal. And we submitted all of our invoices as required, whatever the date was, a month or so ago. So he's completed his review. He had a couple questions that seem to be easy to answer. He gave one little tidbit about, due to the fact that the state offices have closed for kind of the fiscal year end, and it takes them a while to reopen. I've seen that in other grant programs, right? They shut down the office early at the end of April, sometimes May, to finish the books. Well, that's happened with the Prop 68 funds, so he was saying reimbursement will be happening in the fall.
Oh.
So the extra pumping fee was a tough nut for everyone to swallow in terms of the water master, but it sure looks like it was necessary, because had we not had it, I don't know exactly how bad the cash flow, how long the water master had, but it's going to take longer than I think any of us thought.
Well, but we knew that it was gonna be up to 6 months
6 to 9.
for the first round.
Yeah.
And I think the paperwork was in April.
Yeah, so it's probably gonna be 6 months, so.
Yeah,
So, yeah, thanks,
so
Christine.
that was good planning.
Shannon and others who brought it up, saw it coming in, yeah. So, that's moving along.
Okay.
And then, last but not least, the David Bauer transaction. Our escrow officer is having trouble recording documents, and it's the same issue I have every time I go down there. And our professional recorders have gone back 4 times now and still literally haven't dotted the i's and crossed all the t's, or maybe it's the other way.
Hey, Jeff, can I pipe in?
So we're very, very close. It was just funny to see our professionals saying, I got rejected because no document transfer tax has to be written at the top, and I have gone over there to that county office a handful of times and been told the same thing. So it was just funny to hear that it happens to everyone. So, and it sounds like Steve has the good news that the funds actually have been transferred and the escrow is closing. And is the deal done, Steve? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, it got recorded this morning. We're all done with phase 1.
Awesome. Nice. Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
So that is it. So thanks, Steve, Jessica,
Thank you,
everyone,
on that.
board, committees, for getting that done.
Yes.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Well, we come to the end of our regular agenda, and we need to go into closed session. And it is 10:39. Is 10:45 acceptable to everyone to re-meet for a closed session? All righty. Thank you, everyone in the public, and we're going to go into closed session now, and we'll get back to